Welcome to Charts Today Energy. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 18th of October, comes to you from London. We're seeing crude prices falling this morning, so that's having a little bit of an impact on the market. Just taking a look at the macro, uh, we see here the dollar is actually rising, so dollar strength on those Fed comments yesterday, just pushing the dollar higher. That means we're seeing uh, some euro weakness creeping in, just recovering now, but yesterday we fell into bearish territory. Against the yen, the dollar is actually now bullish on all three time frames. Remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute charts, my long term, my medium term, and my short term view. Sterling actually falling lower on that dollar strength and Brexit uncertainty, still bearish on the short term chart. Against the euro, relatively flat this morning. Against the Swiss franc, also flat. So we're seeing that. Markets generally, the US markets gave up most of their gains at the close yesterday. Asia particularly worry the big worry China down some 3%, and looking at the Chinese market we're seeing here big downside targets some 25% lower this year, so really quite big falls there. Gold also just starting to give up some gains, but really has been a bright spot of late. And US 10-year yields sitting at 3.21% this morning, just gaining on those Fed comments and bonds falling in Europe. And tech stocks actually just managing to hold their ground, really propping the stock market up at the moment. Looking at the energy mix, we see here Brent crude just now kicking lower below the cloud here. Correlation with the dollar, that dollar stronger, crude just falling away a bit on that, and the correlation actually kicking in there on the 60-minute chart. We do see here the fall away this morning in Brent, and we've got a downside target now of 77.60. This is on the 1-minute chart. All this data coming from Thomson Reuters Icon, sitting here on the weekly, my long-term view, my medium-term view, and my short-term view. So this is 60-minute targets, 1-minute targets. So this is the 1-minute data, just seeing really what's going on in real time. Taking a look at WTI, much the same picture. Downside targets here as well, 68.70, so that's 1.3% lower. And we're seeing the fall away this morning, just continuing from the middle of yesterday. We still have got some quite good long-term targets for crude oil, but we're in the short-term mode. It looks like we're falling before we have any chance of rising. Taking a look at US nat gas, this is the bright spot really. It's sitting at 3.29%, still sitting at those 9-month highs and holding its gains. Unusually for nat gas fairly fickle normally, giving up any gains in the US, but here we're seeing this higher, these long-term targets in train, 334, 331. On the 1-minute chart, if you're trading nat gas, this is where you're going to see the rises. 336, this target was given back on the 14th of October at 320. Now we've got 350 kicking in if we make new highs, so 6% higher. So for a long while, nat gas has been bearish in the US, now starting to look quite strong. Taking a look at heating oil, much the same picture as crude, as is RBOB. No big surprises there. Coal prices sitting below this $100 mark at $96. If you're running on Trayport, you will have probably better liquidity in the data, so you will see targets. Here we saw how the downside targets were given and met. We've got this new upside target 101 on coal, but strong resistance, and we need to break above this 96.75 level to activate that. So it looks like coal is just heading lower again. The liquidity, as I say, if you're running on Trayport data, you'll see that. Looking at emissions on the December contract, emissions actually lower this morning, some 2% down. We've got this downside target of 1855. The 1-minute chart for emissions is really cool. We see here 1835, 1855. These are the targets dominating at the moment on the 1-minute chart. Notice how we had this target back on the 15th of October from 1950 to 18. That's where we went. We have got this upside target, but for the moment the downside is dominating. Keep an eye on that chart through the day, and we see here the deterioration in price. Correlations with crude oil as well. Taking a look at gas looking stronger this morning. NBP up 1%. Uh, we saw yesterday quite strong moves towards the close. This morning we're just coming off that high a bit, but we are still up on the open this morning. We've got some quite interesting short-term targets for MBP, 72.80 if we can move above 71.25. So that's another 3.4% higher. It looks like the tide is just turning a little bit there on the short-term charts. Medium term, we are still a bit bearish, so it's trends within trends. TTF looking stronger as well this morning, just seeing that rise from yesterday's low point. Not as clear on the upside targets here on the 1 minute chart, but keep an eye out for any new targets emerging throughout the day. Do still have some downside targets here, but the trend is up, so it does look like we're just going to see some respite there. Correlation with crude is quite strong on the daily, so any bucking the trend on crude oil is likely to be short-lived. NCG in Germany actually not looking anywhere near as strong, down 2%, so falling this morning. We've got a 4% downside target here. Again, on your Trayport screens, you'll probably have better liquidity and possibly slightly different targets from what the data I'm looking at here on Thomson Reuters Icon. Italian gas prices also just lower there on the charts, and downside targets at 26.30 and 25.35, so 4 to 6, 7% lower. Taking a look at power prices, the German power price fairly flat this morning. We see here not as clear a trending as gas, and that's showing up in the targets. Actually, we're seeing here targets in either direction. We're really sort of range bound and just waiting for a break. So very hard to call German power today on the basis of that chart. So we are still in bearish mode on the short term, but bullish on the medium and long term. French power down some 0.4%. Again, it could go either way. We're just seeing power prices really in that mode. We've got some quite big downside targets here. French power's got a lot more price action, and we do have targets as low as 10 and 20% and upside of 11%. So really one to watch there. But we're seeing here the price is bearish below the cloud. Taking a look at Nordic power, also just trending lower short term, so that's quite key too. Dutch power holding on to its gains from last few weeks, so looking relatively good. And if we look at Czech power, Czech also much the same. It's all based on this German power move, which way we're going to go next. Polish power actually improving over the last couple of days, has been quite volatile as well. Got quite good upsides. This is from the exchange data on Polish power. We've got quite good upsides, 3 and 4% upside, so that will be quite interesting to watch. Italian power looking relatively similar, just holding on to its gains. All about German power for the moment. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.